I don't know how to describe it other than like a demon type of sound.
But it's silhouetted, hulking, every bit of 5.5 feet wide, 13 to 14 foot tall, pitch black.
The one thing that ran through my mind when I had this encounter was I don't have a big enough gun.
Your host, two-time witness and field researcher for more than 40 years, William Jevning. Welcome to Creek Devil.
Welcome. This collection of 3 stories is being brought to you by William Jevning, and they are being narrated by me, Jim Sower. Story number 1, Limpets. Story number 2, Choanito. Story number 3, The Ogress. Story number 1, Limpets. Quaikute Legends by James Wallace, 1981. There were 4 or 5 children laughing and having fun on a beach. Their parents had taken a canoe and gone to a good place for digging clams. The children were playing on the sand near a pit in which they had built a fire. They put rocks in the fire, and when the rocks were red hot, they baked limpets on them and ate them. The little limpet shells fitted perfectly on the children's fingers, and they were having fun playing with them. At first, they did not notice a big figure creep slowly out of the woods and advance on one of the children. It looked like a big, big man with sunken eyes and covered with hair. Finally, one child spotted him, but made no outward indication that he had noticed. He whispered to the others, "It's Big Figure. Don't scream. Don't run away. Pretend you are not afraid." All the children put limpet shells on their fingertips and circled around to the other side of the huge figure, so they were between him and the forest. The giant turned toward them, his back to the fire. The children were trembling, but the oldest bravely said, "We are ones that can scare people too." They opened and closed their fingers as if they were blinking. Slowly, they advanced on the giant, continuing to blink their fingers with the limpet shells on the tips. The figure started backing up as the children advanced. He took several steps and suddenly tumbled backward into the pit with the red-hot stones in it. The big creature was badly burned, and the jackknife position he found himself in made it hard for him to get up. "Cover him up! Cover him up!" screamed the children, and they quickly buried him with sand and gravel. When the parents returned to the beach where they had left their children, the giant was dead. "We might not have been here when you came back," the eldest child cried, as all the children ran down to meet their parents' canoe. They all spoke at once. "Big Figure was here," they said. "We buried him in the cooking pit." Copyright James Wallace, Big Figure and the Limpets, Quaikute Legends, Blaine, Hancock House, 1981, pages 165 through 166. And now, story number 2, Choanito. Choanito, the Wenatchee tribe's night people. Among the Wenatchee tribe, Sasquatch was known as Choanito, which in their language means night people, and is pronounced Cho-a-ni-to, Choanito. Isabel, a 100-year-old Indian woman, member of the Wenatchee tribe, gave the following report of an event which occurred during her great-grandfather's generation. In the fall of the year, October, a group of male members of the Wenatchee tribe were on a hunting trip near Wenatchee Lake. One of the men became separated from the rest of the party and was captured by Choanito. He was taken to a cave far up in the Rocky Mountains and held captive by a family of Choanitos through the winter until spring. The odor in the cave was terrible. They would not take him out hunting with them, but made him remain in camp near the cave with the women. They were like a different tribe of Indians. In the spring, they returned him to where they had captured him. Upon returning to his camp, he was immediately recognized by the children, who couldn't believe that he was back, as he had been gone for so long. They thought that he had been killed. He had been well treated by Choanito. Other reports. Margie, an Anglo woman, married and living on the reservation since 1984, reports that recently she and her mother-in-law had dug camas roots, which they placed on the roof of their trailer near Nespelem Creek, where animals could not get at them. During the night, her mother-in-law heard Choanito on the roof. In the morning, the camas roots were gone, and Choanito had put her puppy up on the roof. Choanito is still very active in the area. At night, lights can be seen moving along the base of a nearby mountain as a pack of them travel along, and many have been reported on Keller Butte. People are always warned to be out of the mountains before dark. Copyright Dr. Ed Fush, Ph.D., anthropologist. His book, They Walked Among Us, Choanito and the Stick Indians of the Colvilles. And now, story number 3, The Ogress. The Ogress, Habu Native American Stories from Puget Sound. Copyright Vi Hilbert, Basket Ogress, Habu Native American Stories from Puget Sound. Seattle, University of Washington Press, 1985, pages 42 through 44. Ogress. A group of children knew a woman who lived all alone near the river. The children knew that she was lonely, and they wanted to visit her. When they asked their parents for permission to go, their parents said, "No, you can't go because it is too far away. The giant woman might get you when you are away from home. The giant woman is powerful. She would put you in her huge clam basket." The children ignored their parents. They got into a canoe and went on their way to visit the lonely woman. When night came, they made themselves a camp on the other side of the river. They built a fire and cooked their supper. One of the children was a hunchback. When the children divided their supper, Hunchback was given the tail part. They traveled for several days. Each evening they would stop to camp overnight and eat their supper. Every time they would give Hunchback the tail part for his share. Hunchback finally said, "If you folks are always going to be giving me the tail part when I would really rather have the tips, I will call the giant woman." When night came again and they stopped to camp and eat their supper, it was still the tail part which he was given. Now Hunchback hollered. He hollered, "Come downhill, giant woman, come downhill, giant woman. It is just the tail part that I am given by my playmates." The giant woman heard right away. "Oh, there is someone hollering at me." She put her basket on her back and she walked. She was a huge person, this giant woman. She chewed on everything as she traveled. She arrived where the children were. Right away she began to pick up the children one by one and put them into her basket. She grabbed Hunchback first and put him in there. When all of the children were in the basket, the giant woman walked. She carried these children upland. Suddenly, she could feel something catch at her basket. She thought, "Oh, it must be Hunchback who has caught onto something." Hunchback had squirmed and squirmed until he managed to get himself up on top of the other children. Each time he came to a leaning tree, he tried to grab a hold of it. But no, he couldn't do it. On the fourth try, he did. The giant woman went on walking. When she arrived at her home with the children, she immediately gathered rocks and placed them on her fire to heat. When they were good and hot, she began to take the children out of her basket. Then she found that Hunchback was missing. "Oh, Hunchback isn't here. Where is he? Maybe he managed to run away." Giant Woman ran. Hunchback was in the canoe, shoving off from shore. He had a paddle with holes in it. This paddle had holes. When Giant Woman threw rocks at him, he held up his paddle and the rocks just went through. Hunchback paddled hard. Each time she threw a rock at him, he raised his paddle and the rock just went through a hole. Giant Woman gave up. She went home and put more rocks on her fire. She wanted the rocks to be very hot to cook her supper fast. The children huddled together and began to talk to each other. They watched the Giant Woman heating all of those rocks on the fire. Giant Woman noticed, and she said to them, "What are you children saying?" The children carefully answered, "Oh, it is just that we are so happy for you that you are heating rocks. We would like for you to sing and dance before you cook us there." Giant Woman was so flattered at the request that she said, "All right." The children said, "You will dance." She proudly said, "Yes, I will." Now Giant Woman danced. She sang this as she danced. "The children will be roasted on the rocks. The children will be roasted on the rocks. The children will be roasted on the rocks. The children will be roasted on the rocks." The children said, "Oh my, but your song is so nice. Sing more." And again Giant Woman sang and danced. The oldest and strongest of the children were making plans. "We had better push her onto the hot rocks," Giant Woman asked. "What are you children saying?" They cautiously answered, "Oh, we are just so happy for you." They whispered to each other, "When she comes near us, let's all push her." Oh, Giant Woman was coming closer, singing, "The children will be roasted on the rocks. The children will be roasted on the rocks. The children will be roasted on the rocks. The children will be roasted on the rocks." As she came close to them, all of the oldest, strongest children pushed her. Right under the hot rocks she fell. She screamed, "Remove me, children! Remove me from the fire, and I will return you to your home." One of the children said, "Get a forked stick, and we shall remove your grandmother from the fire. We shall remove her. Get a forked stick." However, the children took the forked stick, and everyone pressed her down onto the hot rocks until she was just stuck there, roasting. This is the end of the story. And this is the end of the 3 stories. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Creek Devil. If you or anyone you know has had an encounter with these creatures, please contact us at williamjevning@yahoo.com. That's William, Jevning @yahoo.com. All communication is confidential. Join us for another program next week. And until then, keep your eyes open now.